He's asked me not to call him doctor, but I am going to say doctor, because he worked very hard. Adam is a special advisor on social impacts at the Furniture Resource Centre Group in Liverpool. He's worked with them for almost 10 years to develop the use of social return on investment and to develop that framework for them. Adam is a member of the Social Return on Investment UK Council and is currently working with a whole range of organisations in the third sector to help them prove and improve their social impacts. In addition to his work with those civil society type organisations, Adam also teaches at York University's Management School. Over to you.
Thank you. Ooh, that sounds very loud. Is that sounding okay? Brilliant. Thank you very much, an amazing presentation to follow on from. So yes, as a teacher, I start with my intended learning outcomes. And the way I'd introduce myself, I was trying to decide, I asked if you understood the word geek. I was told that no, but nerd apparently is an understandable word, so I'm calling myself an SROI nerd for today. What I would say, though, is that you don't need to be a specialist. You don't need to be a technocrat to have a go at measuring social impacts. So what I would like to do today is take on the ideas that Jim's introduced and look at tell a story, I guess, the story of how we at the FRC Group, the Furniture Resource Centre, have measured but ultimately managed our social impacts. And I've highlighted that word for a really important purpose. I believe it is very important to measure your social impacts, and there is that external ability to communicate those impacts for funders, for interested stakeholders. But also, and perhaps ultimately for us as a social enterprise, we want to improve on our social impacts. We want to create more social impacts. And fundamentally, we can't do it better unless we understand what we're doing to start with. So, is that right? Yes, so the Furniture Resource Centre is 26 years old. We started in 1988. I wasn't there at the very beginning. And we started as a charity, a very traditional charity. We in Liverpool, I say we, I wasn't there again, but there was a need for people to be provided with low-cost furniture. People living on very low incomes had very poor access to good quality furniture. There was also another problem in Liverpool, in the northwest of England, that lots of furniture was being dumped on the streets, fly tipping. Somebody had the great idea of putting 2 and 2 together, and they came up with 4. They understood that we could take this unwanted furniture and provide it to people on low incomes through trade. When we started as a charity, we've morphed, we've grown, we've transformed into a range of social enterprises or social businesses. And there's our social mission. And again, highlighting the key word, and it's as though myself and Jim have coordinated this, because it is very much about people. We run businesses that create profits and opportunities to change the lives of people living in poverty and unemployment. We are not scared to say we want to make a profit. Profit is not a dirty word in social enterprise. We use that profit and we reinvest it, as the definitions of social enterprise say. But we reinvest it for the benefit of our key beneficiaries, our people. Fundamentally, no matter how we've diversified as an organisation, we are still around those 2 core aims: providing employment and training opportunities to people who are long-term unemployed, and the provision of furniture to people on low incomes, or as it suggests, people in poverty. These are some of the illustrations of our organisation. Effectively, what we do, one of our main businesses is called Bulky Bobs, the purple lorry you see at the bottom of the screen. Bulky Bobs collects unwanted furniture, bulky, large pieces of furniture. So if you have a settee or a fridge or freezer or cooker that you no longer want, you ring Liverpool City Council and we will come and collect it from you for free. We take it back to our warehouse, where it is reused, if possible, and sold on through our shop. We sell the furniture at discounts. If anybody is in receipt of any form of benefit, be they a student or a pensioner, they receive 10% discount. They're very, very competitive prices anyway, but we understand that people on low incomes perhaps cannot afford our prices. I don't know what the comparison is, but you can get a 3-piece suite from our shop for about £60. Is that about €70? If you're a receipt of any sort of benefits, you get 10% discount. Other people are referred to as in more crisis situations. If you're referred to as a crisis person, you get the furniture for free. We will give you everything that you need to fully furnish your home. As well as providing the furniture to people, the guy you can see driving the forklift truck, and also in the lorry, in each lorry there are 3 people. The driver and 2 trainees. The trainees in the warehouse and in the lorries are provided with 12 months paid training, the intermediate labour market. We provide them with 12 months training from long-term unemployment and support them into sustainable employment. We've been very successful over the years. We take around 15 to 20 trainees each year, and at least 70% of those are successful into sustained employment. We know that because we ask them. We ask them for at least 18 months when they complete the training program. So again, it's that long-term impact. So we take furniture, we provide training and employment, we support people into employment and provide that furniture to people in poverty. And it is a real problem in Liverpool and in other parts of the UK. We have worked with other councils in different parts of the UK, and the way we can collect the furniture for free is because we have a trade relationship with the council. We generated about 97% of our income through trade last year, only 3% through grants and donations. And we know we do good things. We are absolutely convinced we do good things. In fact, if you walk into our reception, it says it in great big letters. We do good things. But it's not enough for us as an organisation to be confident in that. We need to be able to measure, demonstrate and improve our performance. We know we do good things, but we want to do even better things. So we've been going for 26 years, and for 15 of those years, we've measured and reported on our social impacts. We started quite traditionally in the UK by producing social impact reports, or CSR reports if you like. 15 years later, we've developed and refined our process. I started the journey with SROI in 2006, 2007. And social return on investment, I will spend some time talking about in a couple of slides, although I have seen there's a workshop later today on the theory of change. So without wanting to influence you, I think that would be a really good workshop to attend. We've also, this year, or last financial year, produced our first set of integrated accounts that are fully audited as well. We're now at a stage where we've combined our economic and our social impacts together. Fundamentally, we are a social business. We are a social enterprise. We have a primary social purpose, as I've already explained. We're not scared about making profits. We want to, because they're reinvested. But we need to be able to measure that performance. We've started now to develop things further. And we have developed social value budgets. Again, this is the SROI nerd in me. I'm very excited by all of these ideas. But we are accountable to our key beneficiaries, our people who are long-term unemployed and people living in poverty. Those are the people we're accountable to. And as a social business, how can we say we are accountable to those people if we are not able to demonstrate the social performance, those social impacts? I have often wondered where we are on this sort of evolutionary map. I don't think we're here yet. We're certainly making some sort of developments. We're not at a stage yet where we can say it's perfect. We develop and we refine this each year. And the way we do that is by asking our key stakeholders. As Jim's already outlined this morning, we need to ask the people that matter, what are the outcomes? What are those impacts that we've created as an organisation? Be they positive or negative, intended or unintended. If we want to measure those things, if we want to do our good things, we need to be able to understand them, ultimately to improve them as well. So how do we do that? We use social return on investment. Is this something that people are familiar with, just to give me an idea? Hands up if you've seen SROI before. Oh, well, I can finish now then. That's fantastic. Thank you. Social return on investment is a way of monetizing outcomes. But that's not everything. The monetary symbol at the end, and I've used pound signs rather than euro signs, as you'll see in a moment, is a way of communicating impact in a familiar language. It is, rightly so, the end result. But the important thing is the story. Understanding what has changed for people and their lives, because that is what we are about. We are an organisation that are focused on people and the impacts on those people. So, the geeky formula says social return on investment is the value of benefits divided by the net present value of investment. Very much like the cost-benefit analysis. What did you get out of it, divided by what you put into it? I almost changed this, and I called it, and I don't know if this will translate very well, so apologies, a sausage machine. You put things in, and you get things out. The inputs through to the outcomes. Excuse me. It is a story of change with both quantitative and qualitative information. The number in itself is meaningless. We can see that if we do the ratio of return, as an example, a ratio of 3:1 suggests that for each £1 or €1 invested, there are £3 of social value created. So what? If I was just to say to you, here's a financial investment opportunity, and there's a 3:1 ratio, would you invest? I'd hope you'd. I see one nod. But if that was all the information I gave you, I will give you £3 for each £1 invested. Surely you'd want to see the story behind. Surely you'd want to understand the story, the assumptions, any estimations that have been made. Financial accounting, of course, is not without its slight problems, shall we say. SROI is not immune to those either. I like to think that the difference, perhaps, between social accounting and financial accounting, and apologies to the finance people in the room, is transparency, honesty, perhaps, or additional transparency and additional honesty. What it does is to develop these theories of change, the stories. What happened to you? What experiences did you experience as a result of your involvement with these activities? Were they positive? Were they negative? Were they intended or unintended? But it is more than just monetizing those outcomes. And I'm going to show some examples of how you can monetize those examples. There are people that I know who say you can and should monetize everything. I see a scowl there on the front row. I see two scowls. I believe you can monetize everything. Whether you should is a different question. Now I'm getting affirmative nods, so I'm happy. But what we are saying, again, this fundamentally, we are accountable to our key beneficiaries. If we want to be able to demonstrate our value and make things better for the lives of our beneficiaries, we need to improve our social value. Social impact is more important than our financial impact. Financial we need. And as an indication, we turned over about £4.5 million last year. And for the first year in 3, we also made a profit. So we were very happy. But what we did with that profit was to reinvest it into our people. Was to decide where to invest it. So I'd now ask the question, if you don't understand the social impacts you are creating, how would you know where and how to invest your financial profit? We as an organisation have a number of different training programs. We have some money. Fantastic. Where do we invest it? Do we go with Project A, Project B, or Project C? Do we just use rule of thumb? Do we estimate? Do we think, I understand, I know this, I know it's that project? Or do we, as a more sophisticated approach, if you like, understand the different value that those different projects create? Therefore, we are able to maximize our social impacts. Somebody's stolen my slide already this morning. Sorry. I won't dwell on this, but this is my sausage machine. I changed it to telling the stories of impacts. I thought it was a bit more appropriate. But you put things in. And we as an organisation invest financial resource. We also invest our time, skills, commitment. We also ask our trainees and our beneficiaries to invest. Their time is important as well. Their commitment, their energy, their passion are also important. And we get outputs. This summary, if you like, of the quantitative things, the easy-to-measure things. We know that 15, generally males, not exclusively though, 15 people will graduate from our training program each year. The output. So what? I'm almost thinking of this is now in my head the so what proposition. So what 15 people complete the training program? If they don't make their journey into employment, how effective is our training program? It's the outcomes that matter. As I know it was going to say. Only by measuring those outcomes are we able to understand how successful or not we have been as an organisation. So we may have people that graduate from our training program, but if all 15 don't find work, if all 15 go back into the welfare system, has their lives been changed? Not significantly enough, I would suggest. And we know that 70% of our trainees do graduate and go into successful employment. How do we know that? We ask them. We don't assume. We don't estimate. We don't hope. We certainly don't overclaim. We don't overclaim that everybody graduates and goes into employment because that is not realistic. One of the key principles of social return on investment is to involve and engage stakeholders. Only by asking those stakeholders what has changed in your lives are we able to understand those outcomes. Did you find work? What other outcomes perhaps have you achieved as well? It's not just about work. Some of our other training programs, the people are not ready to go into work. They are further away from the job, from the marketplace, if you like. Maybe unemployed for decades, having lots of social problems as well. We have a lot of people coming to us with things that make them unattractive to traditional employers. By asking those people what has changed and what's important, we are able to understand that. So, we have the output. People complete the training program, 15, 20 people each year. So what? They go into sustained employment. That's the outcome measure. And we know again that around 70% of our guys, our trainees, go into employment. What social return on investment then says is, okay, you understand the outcome, you have the indicator is employment. What's the value of that? What's the monetary value of that outcome? And that's where social return on investment differs to a lot of other outcome measurements. It takes it that step further, and it monetizes those changes. Any ideas how? I think this is the more straightforward one. This is the teacher in me. I'm asking for responses. It's that Latvian shyness again, isn't it? Well, they change their income. These people were previously supported by our welfare system, and hopefully now they're in a job that doesn't require that support, or shall we say less support. What we are not saying is that these people are now earning, let's say, £15,000. Aren't we fantastic? £15,000 of impact. It's the change. It's the change in income. If the person, the individual, was earning £5,000 previously, the difference is £10,000. The 15 minus the 5,000. It's the change in income for individuals. But they're not the only stakeholder that has benefited from that change. The national government will also benefit from people being in employment. There will be an increase in tax and a reduction in welfare expenditure. Any SROI nerds in the room yet? Any converts? This, I would say, is the easiest or most straightforward way of monetizing changes. Somebody's income has changed. It's relatively easy for us to measure. What if there's a different change? What if it's not so straightforward? What if it's a softer change, if you like? So from the same output, the same individual may have a different outcome. An outcome that they have increased confidence and self-esteem. Perhaps they've increased their relationships. Perhaps their well-being has improved. Can we and should we measure those in a financial respect? I now see some absolute shakes of the head. What I would say before I show an example of this is SROI is not a way of saying that this is a true monetary value. We are not saying that I could walk into a shop and buy confidence off the shelf or self-esteem. If you could, life would be so much easier. What we are saying is we want to represent those changes, those outcomes, in a way that is meaningful and understandable. It's understandable to external stakeholders, our funders, but also it's a way of us being able to compare apples with apples. How did that one go in translation? Great. We have our inputs, we have our investments, which are generally financial. By translating that denominator, that bottom part, the top part, even the numerator, into the same language, we are able to compare our investments with our outcomes. No longer at the Furniture Resource Centre do we say that the investment cost us X and we got 10 people into jobs and 3 people found confidence. What we now say is, well, let's try and find a way of monetizing those non-tangible outcomes. I won't ask for any sort of assistance with this one. There are a number of ways you can value these things. And again, it is not a direct cost value, it's an approximation, an approximation of value. And there are a number of ways we can do this. One suggestion is this. In the UK, and I'm sure in many parts of the world, if you're feeling a bit low in confidence, you can sign up for a confidence course. You can go and do 6 weeks, 1 day a week, on a confidence course. And there is a market value to that confidence course. Similarly, with self-esteem, with improving well-being, happiness, whatever the outcome may be, there are generally market alternatives, if you like. I always use the same example as well. This is the idea that we can perhaps value anything. Whether we should or not is the question that remains. The value of friendships. In the UK, again, I think it's Europe-wide, there is this program called, ready for this one? Rent a Friend. It is a legitimate service. It's not a service that some of you may be thinking it is. If you move to a new city and you don't know anybody, you can rent a friend. There's a value of £11 an hour. The question I always ask is, well, how many hours do you have to pay for that person before they become your true friend? Imagine 4 months down the line and you're still paying to meet your friend. It sounds a bit strange. But again, it's a way of representing those changes in a familiar language. The outcomes we deal with are very much around confidence, self-esteem, employability. Again, as an example, if we increase somebody's employability, not the employment, well, how else could they have got that change? That's the question we ask. If you didn't come here and come on our program, what else could you have done, or what else could somebody else have done to experience that same change? Employability, you could go on a particular training program, a CV building workshop perhaps. There are market alternatives, and if there aren't, there are still other ways to find those financial approximations. I guess the thing that this also shows is that it demonstrates the impact for our trainees. We would also consider other material stakeholders. I would ask the trainee, who else in your life has this impacted upon? And what they may say is, well, I have a much better family relationship. So family, another key stakeholder. I'm now a more active citizen in the local economy. Maybe the local economy is an important stakeholder. The national economy is equally an important stakeholder. We absolutely ask the questions around the counterfactual, the deadweight, the displacement, and the attribution. This is not all down to us at the FRC. We know full well that the individuals that come on our training programme are supported by their family, their friends, and other agencies. They deserve credit also for the impact. But ultimately, these are the things that are ignored. The confidence, the self-esteem. In traditional performance or impact measurement, these are the things that are totally ignored. I like to think that SROI is a way of giving a voice to the voiceless. It provides an opportunity to understand what has changed for those people. And it's people that are not asked traditionally. My little picture up there is to remind me and to remind everybody that stakeholders are central to this. I would not assume any of this without asking my stakeholders first. And it may sound like an onerous task. People may be sat there thinking, I couldn't possibly do all this. You've been doing this for 10, 15 years. I bet you collect a lot of this information anyway. As a social enterprise, as a third sector organisation, you will probably collect a lot of that information. You may not have all of the outcomes, but I'd ask the question, why not? If, like us, you're around getting people into employment, you will measure how many people go into employment. Equally, when we're providing furniture to people on low incomes, we need to know that we are delivering it to people on low incomes and not people perhaps just after a bargain. We need to measure those changes. Why? The title I was given today is Why Does Social Impact Matter? And it matters to us as an organisation because we know we do good things, but we want to do even better things. We want to ensure that we maximise our social value. We want to empower our key stakeholders, our key beneficiaries. Only by asking those questions are we able to do so. There is the external potential. Yes, we can demonstrate our social impacts to our funders. And next year, we go for a contract renewal in Liverpool. And Bulky Bobs, we will shout about our social return on investment. For each £1 invested, we will create lots of social value, I'm sure. It improves our stakeholder relationships. We're very happy with that. But internally, this is where we started to really understand the value of valuing, I guess. We used to shout very loudly about our impact. We shout less about it now. We use it internally for our decision making. Again, the idea that if we have 2 projects or 3 projects that we would like to invest in, but we simply can't afford to do everything, we use social return on investment to compare projects A, B, and C. Which creates the most social impact? It has allowed us to make some very difficult decisions, but some very beneficial decisions as well. We had the great situation that partway through last financial year, we knew we were going to make profit. And as a social business, profit is secondary to our social mission. So we had a situation where 3 senior managers presented to our board. They presented to our board on a proposal for investment based on the social impact of that investment. The fantastic thing was we had enough profit to provide all 3 with funding. That's just because they were very good. We understand what works, and we understand what doesn't work. We're quite honest about things. As well as measuring the positives, we also measure the negatives. Here's a question. What about those 30% of people that don't find work? We're very happy with the 70% that do. What about those other 30%? Those 3-4 people each year? Do we ignore those? Do we just write them off and say, well, 70% is good enough? No. we measure that social impact as well. That's our development. We are trying to understand why those people didn't find work and look at improving that. I think the way we will probably go is have some sort of recap with those people where we invite them back to the organisation so we can try and work with them again, perhaps not on a 12-month process, but a short-term intervention, if you like, to improve things. It certainly improves employee cohesion. Again, you don't need somebody like me to come in and do this all of the time. You can, I thought that was a laugh then. Excuse me. You can, the power through impact measurement is around embedding those processes within the organisation. Embedding those processes within the organisation means that you take ownership of those ideas. It means that people are involved. It means that people within the organisation understand their role in creating social value. Those people not directly involved with our trainees still input information into our social metrics. They know that they contribute to the social value. We can decide where to invest our resources, because ultimately, again, I keep saying this, but I feel so passionate about it. We are accountable to our key beneficiaries. If we are truly accountable to them, from an ethical perspective, we need to be able to demonstrate that value and improve that value, because ultimately we're about empowering their lives. The only way to empower their lives is to understand the changes in their lives and to make those changes even better. Remember, as an organisation, we do good things, but we want to do even more good things. Thank you very much.
Is the sign of a good speaker that when you go, they stop. Questions for Adam?
Must be lunchtime.
No. You don't get fed until someone asks a question. I have one here. Thank you.
Sorry, hello, my name's Eva, and I have just a practical question. What happens with those trainees? Like, do you help them afterwards to find a job as well? And do they work as truck drivers, or what exactly is
Yeah, I probably should have made that a bit clearer. We take our trainees, again, long-term unemployed, and they go hopefully into the logistics industry, because there's a gap. We take people who don't even have a driving licence, provide that driving licence, and then it's looking at a forklift truck licence, perhaps a heavy goods vehicle licence, but it's up to them. They choose which one they want. We provide them with lots of other skills and qualifications and 12 months of paid training. We then work with them. Well, I say we have some dedicated members of staff. Our HR department, which is called our People and Learning department, work with those people to help them find work. We have lots of contacts. So we use our networks and we try and arrange interviews for our people. They're not in a situation where they're preferred to anybody else, but I would say that we've leveled the playing field. They've come from a position where they were disadvantaged, and we've now provided them with the opportunities to empower themselves. So yes, we will help them write their CVs, provide them with references, even sometimes take them to the interview if they don't have there's no public transport or they don't have their own. So very practical, very hands-on support from the beginning.
Just a side question, and are they legally responsible for something as well? Like, do they have some official responsibilities towards you after the program?
No, none whatsoever. Once they leave us, they've effectively left the organisation. But as I say, we do chase them. We track them for 18 months after the program. And what we find is that lots of them are willing to stay in touch with us because they really value the assistance that our organisation has provided. In fact, we had our 26th birthday. We have an annual birthday party. It's fantastic. And lots of the former trainees come back. It's a great organisation. I've been very privileged to be involved with them.
We have one here. Behind.
ask quickly then. What about scale? It seems to me from Jim's example and your example that scale somehow matters. Not somehow, but it matters a lot. And what would be your advice to comparatively small social enterprises here in the Baltic States, perhaps an enterprise that employs 5 people? What is their story they can say?
I knew I was going to be asked this question, and I'm not sure I've got an answer. Very similar. I mean, we as an organisation are reliant on contracts with local authorities. What we are able to do with those local authorities is demonstrate savings. And national government as well. If we get X number of people into employment, we will save the Treasury however much money, or provide the Treasury with money, I should say. I would say that not all local authorities are receptive to the ideas. We're now in the situation where, due to, I'm going to do this, austerity, local authorities are really having to cut their budgets back. And in Liverpool, there is now they're making the decision whether they should start to charge the individuals for their collection. My belief is if the charge comes in and if it's too significant, we will lose a lot of our donations and we will have a lot of fly tipping again, dumping on the streets. So I guess there's a real incentive or real imperative for us as an organisation to go to these local authorities and say, look, we will save you money. The provision of furniture to people in crisis means that they can maintain their home more effectively. It means that people won't involve in so much antisocial behaviour. There's a link between employment and criminality, between employment and health, employment and drug and alcohol abuse. It's about us as third sector social enterprise organisations telling that story effectively. And trying to convince those decision makers that we can have an impact. And again, that's what I think SROI can do. For me, it bridges a gap. It gives the voice to the voiceless. If these decision makers are making decisions that should be for the betterment of these people here, we need to understand what these people want, what the outcomes and what the impacts are. So it's difficult. We're still struggling in terms of scale. We're an organisation of around 70 full-time employees and about 200 trainees. We have 15 and then another programme that's 200. So we still struggle with the scale, and we find that we need more proactive and more receptive local authorities. What we've done now as an organisation is started to diversify even further, and we want to generate our own revenue even more. We're going to start a business next year with a projected turnover of £70 million per annum after 7 years, because we want to do it ourselves. We're going to take that money, reinvest it, and put it back into people who are long-term unemployed and people living in poverty. I don't know if that answered the question at all.
The issue is never scale. It's not. Everybody starts from.
Oh, is that
somewhere.
the
That's
answer?
that's the answer, and it doesn't matter. If you take the point that had been made, the point's been consistently made that this is the SROI geeky nerd, but it is not an end in itself. It is a tool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're measuring changing one life or changing 1,000 lives. The impact on one measure is exactly the same. So that's what's important. Don't get scared by, there's only 2 of us, what do we do? Or, because the UK is a 62 million people, Ireland is 4 million people, Latvia is 2 million people. So sometimes it's much more challenging thinking in these big terms for countries that are small. But actually what you do is you scale it down it becomes a Latvian experience, and this is some of the things that Jim was talking about, and Adam said at the beginning, it's about how you, in a Latvian context, make this work in Latvia. Absolutely. It's how you take this and make it right for you. It's not about, these are just good examples, but they're not the answer. Latvians have to have answers to Latvian challenges because that's the only way it works.
Absolutely. I'd also say don't be daunted by any of the ideas I've suggested. Start small. We did. In 2006, we looked at one project. We didn't even consider all of the outcomes or all of the stakeholders. Start small, become comfortable, and expand as you do as well.
We asked them both to come and not be terrifying, but we failed. It's okay.
Expectations for next year, less fear.
Can I, at the risk of sort of cutting across Adam, I just wanted to add an example, which was one of the examples in front of the European Commission group when we were writing the impact measurement standards. And that was that we recognised that on the one end, this needs to apply to British Red Cross or a big organisation. On the other end, think of a community pub where a small village is trying to look after the 12 or 14 elderly people in that village and are worried that they're getting isolated. They make the pub homely and friendly. They organise games for them to come and play. They make it a social centre. And their impact measurement is to have a chalkboard on the wall where they put a mark for every elderly person that comes in this lunchtime to see if they've all turned up or if they need to go and find them because they may have fallen over. That's measuring your impact. That is real life scale.
Thank you, Jim. We have one final question.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I'm representing charity shops in Latvia, Otra Alp, as well as Mentor Latvia, which provides social mentoring services for youth from orphanages. And the two challenges that we've faced in Otra Alp is in both organizations is getting the data and statistics. In the charity shops, it's time-consuming. You have to count every single thing, the number of things you donate further. You could measure it in bags or kilos or, and how do you put a monetary value? And so it's time-consuming. And thankfully, we have a manager who's very keen on numbers and she loves doing it, but it's time-consuming. And we've tried to improve some of the processes to make it more effective, our work more effective, and so it's less of a hassle for the employees to always keep track of every single person, and it's approximately 40 people every day who come in to donate, and it's a lot of counting. So that's one challenge for the charity shops. It's how do you keep the balance of, and maybe there are some statistics that are more important than others. And for Mentor Latvia, the big challenge is that either we collect the data ourselves, but a lot of the state institutions don't have the statistics. And orphanages don't know, unless they themselves take measurements of what happens to the youth after intervention. There's no common database of what happens to them, what's the rate of them going to prisons or, whether they're working or studying or... So should we do that? If it's 2 employees, who should...
I understand the difficulties. I guess there's a couple of bits to that, if you like. I guess the answer is yes, to a point. Don't try and measure everything. Absolutely. Just measure what's most important. What's the most material issues? And I would say from that, it's not the donations, it's not the kilos or the amount of clothing. It is the outcomes for the individuals. It's the outcomes for those, very similar to what we've heard already this morning, around the change in their lives. And as an organisation, I would hope that by measuring some of those things and acknowledging all of the difficulties, that your job becomes easier in the future. Because you're able to say, well, actually, of those 6 things that we do, this one here doesn't really have the impact that we thought it did. Perhaps we don't need to do that. Or perhaps we don't need to do that as much. And we can dedicate our time and resource into those things that create the most social impacts, the most social value. But absolutely, it is difficult. The data doesn't always exist. It certainly doesn't always exist in the UK. It's a matter sometimes of starting small. Start small, ask the important questions to the most important stakeholders. And it sounds to me like the most important stakeholders are the children in that respect.
Thank you very much. Please say thank you to Adam.